Hello there. I'm Adam Dalton, author name A J Dalton. This is How to Write Science Fiction and Fantasy, Episode 1. Uh, and it's about plot, how to organize your plot if you want to write a fantasy or science fiction. Okay, so the plot that's classically used in both sci-fi and fantasy is known as the hero's journey. That's a particular model that has been used since the dawn of, fantasy and science fiction. Whether it's H.G. Wells, whether it's Tolkien or whoever, they use the hero's journey. Where does the hero's journey come from? Well, it's the academic term for it is the monomyth, which is described in Joseph Campbell's book, The Hero with a Thousand Faces of 1949. What Mr. Campbell did, of course, was look at all the classic literature of the various empires and civilizations and decided that there was only one real plot. And he called that the hero's journey. It's almost the story of Christ and Satan as well. So where Christ is the chosen one, Satan is the Dark Lord, but I'll come on to that. So what does this plot look like? How is it organized? If you do a search on Google, you'll see nice pictorial representations of it. But with the way I teach it at university is I tend to go with a 6-step breakdown. Step 1 is your moral dilemma. So our main character has a problem, a situation, and they have two options by which to try and solve this problem. Both options have a potentially negative consequence. Okay. Step 2, we have a trigger event which forces our character to make that decision, and it's usually a very pressurized moment. And in that moment, they tend to make the wrong decision for selfish reasons. Okay, exposing a character flaw in them right near the beginning of the story, though we understand why they've made that decision. Step 3, our main character has to now deal with the negative consequences of their selfish decision, and this is kind of the universe punishing them, teaching them a lesson. Step 4 tends to be high adventure stuff where they've worked through the negative consequences and they're now trying to get themselves into a place to save both themselves and the universe, etc., 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 to reorganize their lives. And this is where we reach step 5 after the high adventure. Step 5 is revisiting that original moral dilemma. Now, it's not exactly the same moral dilemma, but it has a very similar dynamic. And this time, our hero has learned from their previous mistake. They have grown as a person, they have grown as an individual, and this time they make the right decision as a more mature person. And often that more mature decision involves self-sacrifice. Now, it's at this moment that the universe then decides to reward them for their self-sacrifice and for having become a better person, and they are miraculously allowed to survive and to save the universe and often win the hand of the beautiful princess in marriage, and they all lived happily ever after. That's the classic plot shape. If you think about The Hobbit, it uses those steps exactly. So Bilbo Baggins has a very comfortable life in his burrow. Gandalf comes to the door and says, "Oh, you need to go on this quest because the world's in trouble. We need you to help save the world." Bilbo really doesn't want to do that. It sounds extremely dangerous, and he's quite comfortable. Thank you very much. Gandalf then points out, but if you don't join the quest, the trouble will come to your door eventually anyway. So you kind of have to anyway. There's a party where he's feeding the dwarves and he becomes boastful. If you like, he kind of gets drunk and he's like making these lavish promises about, oh, I'll go on the quest, I'll go on the quest. And in that moment, he has made a kind of a vain, proud promise that actually commits him to the adventure. He goes on the adventure. The first little challenge that they all have is trying to get past the ogres, and Bilbo tries to steal the gold of one of the ogres or trolls, and and he gets caught. he's selfishly trying to benefit himself with his role in the quest. And the dwarves come to try and save him. The dwarves get caught. They're all about to be eaten and cooked over the fire when Gandalf turns up and has to rescue them all by a trick of throwing his voice. He warns Bilbo's like, this is the last warning you're going to get about your selfishness. If you don't change your ways, all your friends will be cooked next time. Your goose will be cooked and we'll all be dead and the world will go to wreck and ruin. You must learn as an individual. They go on a high adventure. They end up in the goblins' mines, and Bilbo's slight cowardice and selfishness again sees him come to the darkest place, the lowest point, deep beneath the mountain of doom, in the darkness, alone, isolated from the others, and he meets Gollum. Now, Gollum is from a very similar race to Bilbo, and he is the dark version of Bilbo. Gollum's selfishness and appetite for gain has seen him murder his best friend to steal the ring, which Bilbo has found. Bilbo, if he continues down this route, will become Gollum, and he will end up in the darkness living alone as a murdering, selfish, self-obsessed individual listening only to his own voice. To escape Gollum in the darkness is no easy thing because Gollum has heightened senses and he's lived down there a long time. Bilbo is tempted to murder Gollum. This is the ultimate extension of his selfish desire for self-preservation and to keep the ring for himself. He's tempted to do it, and in that moment he remembers at that moment of greatest peril, greatest self-confrontation, he realizes in that moment that he will become Gollum. He will literally replace Gollum there in the darkness if he murders Gollum. And it's in that moment that he's like, no, I won't do it. Even though he has the opportunity, I'm going to resist that moment and be a better person and just try and find another way. And through hijinks and so on, he manages to jump past Gollum and some goblins and miraculously escape. And having done that without selfishly disadvantaging others, Bilbo has grown as a person, and the universe rewards him with almost superpowers, such that he, even though he's the smallest, weakest individual in the kingdom, he manages to beat the biggest and most demonic and most evil of creatures, which of course is Smaug the dragon. And they all lived happily ever after. That is The Hobbit. It is the classic hero's journey. It is used not just in fantasy, it's also used in science fiction. George Lucas, when he made the first Star Wars, A New Hope, admitted in an interview that he just stole the plot line from Joseph Campbell, The Hero's Journey. It's used in The Matrix, it's used in The Hunger Games, it's used in E.T., it's used in all the classic Hollywood movies. And that, my friends, is The Hero's Journey. Okay, if you need more detailed explanation with more worked examples of the hero's journey so that you can then develop your own plot line based around it, you have two options. One option would be to pick up The Satanic in Science Fiction and Fantasy, my new title, where there's a whole chapters about fantasy and sci-fi and the hero's journey and the Dark Lord and the Chosen One. Or you can check out my website, www.ajdalton.eu, where there are free mini lessons in creative writing, and there's at least 10 there now already, and they're free. There are examples, little test exercises, and then a writing challenge for you, which you can send me if you really want to. And there, my friends, endeth the first lesson. Bye-bye.